Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. Can't help but notice it. I'm really enjoying President Trump being in office, and we're having serious discussions about religious alignment with American ideas. And I can't help but notice with Trump in office, people are feeling very reverent to tradition, the kind of tradition that built the United States to begin with. And I can't help but notice that it's showing up in our films and box office. And of course, coming up on Holy Week 2025, with all the great religious ceremonies that go along with it. It's always Palm Sunday is great, and Good Friday's, what it is. And Easter's always full of renewed energy and part of the whole resurrection idea of Jesus Christ. They're showing up in the movies, and The Chosen has continued to do very well at the box office, competing with Hollywood's primary products. The Chosen media television show has been really extremely strong showing. And then, of course, there's this animated movie that came out for Easter, The King of Kings, which actually has some big name talent in it. Hollywood talent that you're seeing a change occur in Hollywood towards understanding that one of the best studios to work for is like Angel Studios, and they're doing great work, better than the traditional movie houses, because people want this kind of material. And even though these stories have been told over and over again in different formats, people are attracted to the products that are affiliated with religious value. And as opposed to any other time that I've ever seen where people maybe took it for granted originally, the idea that you go to church on Sunday and have valued relationships with community members built around biblical understanding. The fear of it was being lost by this secularist push from all these progressive elements in our country, where we thought that America could withstand all that constant erosion. We took it for granted, and now that we've seen how evil some of those people were prior to Trump being reelected, and we're essentially almost losing our country over it, people have a new appreciation for it. It's showing up at the movie theater. I had an interesting experience. I was talking about all this with my family. We were driving all over West Virginia and Ohio, Eastern Ohio. And one thing you can't help but notice is everywhere you go, especially when you get off the highways, there are churches with steeples on them, old classic churches, every 10 or 15 miles all across this country. Everywhere you go, and I've pointed that out before, but there's something you really need to understand, especially when you're considering politics and the people who live in them. If you let these cities where they've been Democrat incubators for destructive behavior and the politics that reflect with it, you don't see so many churches. You do see nice churches in those areas, but they get muddled out with all the other buildings that go up around it. So they get kind of lost in the noise. But when you get out in the country and you get out of the flyover states and you're driving around on the side roads and you see all the churches that are out there that people go to and for reverence, to think about religious ideas, you realize how important it is to our culture. And this is why they're doing well at the movies. This is why you do these religious movies. The House of David, I think, is doing #1 on Amazon's show. All the things that are producing out there, it's these religious Bible stories that are resonating so well in entertainment. And if you want to understand why, just drive across this country and see all the churches that are built everywhere that pay reverence to religious understanding and give people something to think about. And when I was explaining why Christianity was so important to some people recently, the main thing isn't so much do you get your entry into heaven based on following some ideology of religion. It's the intellectual aptitude of doing the process that is the most important thing. And when you see all those churches everywhere, and what you're doing is you're reading from the Bible and you're thinking about ideas that are communicated over vast spans of time, that's an excessively intellectual activity. And that activity by itself permeates within human consciousness and is positive, a positive construct. And this idea of separation of church and state, that the state can't be run by religion, or the state can't run the religions, which we saw a blurring of that during the COVID period, when churches were targeted for shutdowns, for social distancing. And well, that was an obvious sign that the progressive intrusion was really after trying to break up the value systems that people have, so they could become untethered from those values and be reconfigured into a state-controlled understanding of how to navigate through life. Very destructive, and we've seen enough of it to have a new appreciation for it now that we've seen that the hostilities have been trying to separate us from it. But when you really travel around and you see how many churches there are in this country that are Christian-based, you can't help but understand that one of the parts and the aspects that makes America great is this intellectual pursuit of religious celebration. Very important to American culture. You can't have American culture and say that there's a separation of religious value from it. You may not make policies and rules based on religious assumptions. That the idea of separation of church and state is to allow people to freely celebrate their love of church and their love of religious assumptions, or the desire to celebrate bigger ideas. But the magic of Christianity by itself, and I think about this every time I go to some major cathedral, it's this intellectual pursuit that you don't get other places in the world, where you have a biblical text and things to think about in it that are very valuable. And you can go to a community center like a church and share that experience with other people in the context of a philosophic discussion, and considering larger ideas than maybe what you might think about when you're going down to the grocery store to get some eggs and milk. Thinking about big, lofty ideas on a God scale is healthy for human development. And it's all across this country, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And now we're hearing that Bible sales are up, and people are starting to find reverence and admitting in public that they actually enjoy these kinds of things. And it's showing up at the box office with movies like King of Kings. That's holding its own in a busy, crowded market of other Hollywood products, and people are preferring what the Angel Studios is doing over what traditional Warner Brothers and Paramount and all these other entertainment companies have been doing, because there's nothing that people like more than they really enjoy thinking about big, lofty subjects like Christianity offers. And you see it everywhere you go, with all these big, massive churches, epically positioned with great steeples, and people drive around them and may not pay much attention to them, but on Sundays they like to know they're there. And if it didn't work for people, there wouldn't be so many of them around, even with all the secular intrusions that we have seen over the years to try and remove Christianity from society and replace it with Islamic hostilities or other religious reverences that do not quite have quite the same intellectual impact. And I think what makes Christianity different is because of the intelligence it takes to be a part of it, and to consider what is said in the Bible and how that can apply to a church-going experience. And it's not like it's a regional thing here and there, isolated to a few religious-oriented people. It's part of mass society, and it definitely is directly attributed to the expansion of the Republican Party and to conservative politics, and how and why Trump was able to endure everything he endured to end up back in the executive branch, because he embraced those value systems. He didn't run from them, and that is the backbone of the MAGA movement. It's all those church steeples all over the United States, and people's love and reverence for reading the Bible. And now that Trump is back in office, you see entertainment heading more in a biblical narrative with, again, House of David, The Chosen, the King of Kings, all coming out as major entertainment options. This is one of the more openly celebrated Easters I remember seeing any time in my life, because people have a new appreciation for it that they didn't have before. And then when we traveled all across eastern Ohio, and because way all over the United States, we traveled on side roads, and you see all the churches that are out there, still out there, all with fresh coats of white paint, and the steeples looking very nice, and woodwork all nice and tidy. People care about their churches, and they love them, and every community has them, and it's a staple of making America great again, is the relationship that you have with the everlasting in the here and now. And Christianity is a great entry point for people to get there. It's a great way to build good, strong communities, and it's alive and well, and I'm happy to see it flourishing instead of going the other way. It's a good thing. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day, and see you later.